thanks to everybody who participated this morning in this experiment, so to speak. The lawyers, ABOTA members, are my colleagues. Many of my colleagues are online watching and listening. The judges here in the 17th, and just some other interested spectators. There's a few things that I don't think they ask you, but I had to log off for about an hour and go do some other hearings. But I want to ask you about a couple things, and I'll just give you some background to this. We subpoenaed 125 people for jury duty here today. I still haven't got the final count as to how many actually showed up that were excused before you all came on to see the lawyers here. So I'm going to get those numbers later, but my guess is it's somewhere in the 60s. Maybe
about
50s.
40, Judge.
Huh?
About 40.
40?
Yep.
40 total for everything?
Yep. For everything.
Okay. All right. Well, that's unfortunately about what we're getting these days on jury duty, both on Zoom and both coming to the courthouse. And it's very sad that 40% of, well, it's less than 40% of 125 people will show up for jury duty. Before COVID hit, we were contemplating doing something about that. It's hard to enforce those kinds of things with the healthcare scares that's going on. But what I wanted to ask about was this. I'm informed that one person out of all of those people that were subpoenaed showed up at the courthouse today, only one. So that meant that at least of the 100 and some odd who got a subpoena, who decided not to show up, read the instructions, because nobody came to the courthouse except that one person that I'm aware of. When you all got your juror summons, you have to remember that that summons that you got is quite different than the average juror summons. The average juror summons would give you directions where to go to park. It would have a map on it. It would tell you when you're supposed to show up, what you're supposed to wear, all those kinds of things. We avoided all of that to try to make the instructions a little clearer on this remote jury selection. So I guess I'll start this way. By a show of hands, do you all think the information on the summons was clear? Were you able to understand what you were supposed to do? And if not, don't put your hand up. I want you to speak up and tell me what the issue was. So if you raise your hand, if you thought everything was clear, you understood it, you knew what to do. All right, that's a portion of you, but not all of you. Before I go to everybody else, with all of those with their hands up and everybody else, the second question to this is, we posted we posted a video on the jury's website. And unfortunately, it was me. And I was there to try to give you all some instructions on what to do and what to expect. How many of you actually viewed the video? All right, well, that's also equally disappointing. And also, we asked during the process for you all to fill out questionnaires. And unfortunately, we only got a very few people filling out questionnaires. How many of you in this group, at least, filled out the questionnaire? All right, that's equally more disappointing. All right, so we must have done something to not make those instructions very clear, or that you all read the summons and just you'd figure it out on the morning of jury duty. So can I hear from any of you all that thought the instructions could be clearer, how we could improve that, what you found confusing? I'll start with juror number 19. I can't read the names, but I can read the numbers. Juror 19. Unmute yourself.
That done. Hello, Judge. Yeah, my thought was that I think the instructions were somewhat clear, but I think they could be clearer. I think there's an opportunity here to provide some sort of online location, a page with the Zoom link, instructions for Zoom, and any other, information, like some sort of centralized location where you can just go and visit and, here's the link and here the step one, get Zoom. This is how Zoom works. Step, this is the Zoom link. Click on this. That will take you to a Zoom meeting. So I think there's an opportunity here for some more automated, centralized
All right,
online location.
thank you. Orlando, didn't we have that on the juror's website right below the link? I thought we had all the instructions there.
You're muted, Orlando. You're muted.
Yeah, sorry. The summons should have had, I think I remember seeing it showing the browardclerk.org website with the jury services page.
But I thought on the
And
jury services page, we had instructions there. I'll go
yes,
back and look.
yeah, the instructions are there with the video and the questionnaire.
All right,
Everything's
maybe
on that
we need to
page.
highlight it. Maybe we need to highlight it in greater detail. Thank you
Yeah.
very much, sir. Anybody else have any comments on all of this? Juror number 11?
For
Cynthia?
me, I tried to open the YouTube video several times. It never opened. I put the
Okay.
YouTube link, it never opened, so I didn't know what to expect, really.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's good to know. Juror 14, Robert?
So the summons mentioned going to the clerk of court's site and then finding the YouTube video from there. I looked, I didn't see it. I was able to access it by just putting in the URL that is on the summons, but I noticed that the URL on the summons does not include www. It just goes from HTTPS to the YouTube link. So I work in tech, so I was
So you
able to look
you
for that.
figured it
But
out. You watched the video then, I'm assuming?
but I was able to find the video. But for somebody that's not as familiar with tech, they may not
Right.
realize to not
Right.
include the www in the
Right,
URL.
we'll do a better job of that. But the video that you watched, were the instructions clear?
Yeah, I found it clear. I think you were pretty clear on what to expect. That it wasn't a trial. That it was sort of a test, and Zoom and all that. I think possibly having some sort of walkthrough showing the screen, like maybe one for computer, one for if you're on a phone, of what it looks like to download Zoom, how to sign
Right.
in, where to go,
Right.
that kind of stuff. It just there's a lot of varying levels of
Right.
tech savviness.
All right, we're going to do a better job of that for sure. That's already hit home. Juror number 16. Thank you, Robert. Edward? Unmute.
I tried to watch the video. It said it was unavailable.
Really?
Yeah.
All right, well, then you couldn't watch it if it was unavailable.
Yeah.
That, of course, would have been the clerk's fault, not the judicial branch of this. So keep that in mind when you vote for judges. Let's see, next, juror number 9, Sebastian.
Yes, this is referring to like when I'm so sorry because like it was glitching out. I couldn't hear you, but when selecting the 6 people that were called, are those 6 people to stay or to be dismissed?
Well, you're all going to be dismissed in just a minute.
Oh, okay. But like
Okay.
the 6 people that were called, is that for what again?
That would have been the jury that was selected by the lawyers.
Okay.
So if you want, we'll make up a case and you can hang around.
Okay. No, I was just asking. Yeah, I was.
All right. Let's see, juror 6, Alan.
Hello. I don't remember seeing the questionnaire, and I did have a problem trying to find the video, but I did finally get to it with my wife's help.
Okay. All right. It's clearly we got to do something better with the questionnaires. Juror number 1, Ted.
Everything worked fine for me. What was really good was last night after 5 p.m. it said to call the phone number to verify the jury, and it specified do not report to the courthouse.
Okay. All right. We'll give a kudos to our jury room for making sure that was done. Before anybody else asks any other questions, I'll just ask anybody else. Anybody else want to give us any more feedback on the process? Juror 23, you have your hand up. We're just curious more in the technical end, in the educational end, in the showing up end, because I'm convinced that we can conduct trials by this methodology. Maybe not every case, but there'll be the right case we can do this. But we're more concerned about the jury selection process. So juror 23, you had your hand up.
Yeah, so first of all, it does not mention the questionnaire anywhere to my knowledge on the summons that we received in the mail. So
Okay.
I only knew about the questionnaire because I went to the website. It also does not tell you that it's mandatory to go to the website to view the video or that there's paperwork to fill out on there. So I
Okay.
think for more detail, so if I hadn't gone to the website, which apparently a lot of people are not, because the video on the summons, it sort of suggests that the video is optional. So if I hadn't gone, I wouldn't have known about the questionnaire. I just think that the summons needs to be a lot more detailed.
So you want it termed in more of, you must do this, you must do that, rather
I
than
think
giving
if
an
you-
option?
I think if you pose it that way, if you tell people on the summons that there's a questionnaire that they must fill out ahead of time, they'll go to the website to do that. But because it doesn't say that on here anywhere, you might just think, I don't need to watch a YouTube video on how to do Zoom,
Right,
so I'm not going to bother going.
right, right. Okay, that's a good point. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Anybody else? Juror 5?
I don't know if these questions are specifically for the summons or for a Zoom trial in general, but I would suggest if there'll be a trial with a lot of evidence, to work out a way that the jurors can view the evidence on their own time, meaning not just a quick flash and then moving on to the next thing. It may delay the trial for a few seconds, but I think it's really important that each juror is able to view the evidence clearly to make a clear decision.
Okay, that's a well point. I think one of the things that we've learned maybe from this process is this may not be the best format for a whole lot of exhibits, just because of the time delay and exactly what you express. And it may be that at the end of the trial, when we do these, if there are just a few exhibits, we give the jurors the exhibits. What happens sometimes is the lawyers don't know which exhibits are in evidence until it just happens. And we don't want people focusing on, maybe if you look at the plaintiff's evidence first and start drawing some conclusions in your mind, when he gets to the defense side and you get their exhibits, whether that would have influenced you changing your mind or focusing on something. But I think that's something we have already broached and talked about, and we'll definitely keep that suggestion in mind if we can do that in the right trial and the lawyers can stipulate to it. Thank you very much.
Especially when it comes to documentation, because we know how hard it is to see that as
Right.
opposed to holding it in your hand. So that's all.
Right, I think in contract cases where there's agreements that are in dispute, we clearly are going to get those to the jury so they can see them in their own time. What you're restricted to do really in a jury trial though is you're restricted to looking at the exhibits and the trial materials during the trial, not out on your own after hours. Everybody's supposed to be doing the same thing, but we can definitely get that done. Thank you. That's a good suggestion. Anyone else have anything you think I need to know, juror number 14?
My concern along those lines was having served on a jury before where contracts were part of it. I know that we were given a good amount of evidence when we went to deliberate. So my concern wouldn't be so much during the trial, but it would be anything that would need to be looked at in the jury room.
Yeah, we're thinking through that process too. We probably would have some form of electronic exhibits that the jury could call themselves up during their deliberations. But that's a good point. We're going to have to tackle that issue also, Judge Henning. Anyone else? All right. Well, again, on behalf of the circuit, I appreciate everybody's cooperation in this, and we've learned a lot. We're going to keep learning from this process. The medical situation out in the county has caused us to keep the courthouse closed basically since March, as far as face-to-face contact. And if things don't improve, we're not going back in there anytime recently. And so we're trying other ways to be able to move cases. This is one of them, without having to risk everybody for face-to-face contact. The sheriff estimates that on a given year, about 2 million people come through the courthouse. And every day a different group of people come through the courthouse. So it's definitely a place where we are primarily making people come, like you all coming for jury duty or a defendant charged with a case. And if we're going to bring our citizens into the courthouse, we all have a responsibility to make sure it's a safe environment. And I don't know that anybody has figured out what that means right now, a safe environment. So we're going to keep closed for a while. We appreciate y'all's patience, and we appreciate y'all working with us on this today. So I'll turn it back to you, Judge.
Your Honor,
Yes.
may I ask a question, Your Honor?
Of course, yeah.
I'd like to ask the jurors whether they felt more comfortable participating in this process on Zoom than they would have coming to the courthouse during a pandemic.
Definitely.
Is there anyone who would have preferred to come to the courthouse as opposed to doing this on Zoom? Okay. do you feel that based on our current situation with the pandemic, that Zoom presents a good alternative to coming to the courthouse, and it's better to do it on Zoom than not to do it at all, and maybe wait a couple of years before we can have jury trials again? Does anybody disagree with that idea? Okay. Everyone.
No.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Could you say that again, please?
No, I say I agree. This is a good way. It's good to take another approach to have, continue, because by the time everything cleared up, the court system will be so backed up. There's so many delays, and so this is a good way if it can work.
Yes, and I want to echo what you've been told today. You are part of a historic process. This has never been done before in Broward County, and we're just trying to begin doing this in the United States. We all want to thank you for giving us your time to participate in this process so we can try to come up with something that we can do where we can maintain the justice system during times like this. Yes, sir, please.
I have a question or a statement. Is being here at home, there's a lot more distractions than it would be in the courtroom, or am I going to pay more attention in the courtroom than I would here? I got my dog here, making sure she's okay. The lady who has the work being done in the house, she's there listening to that. So the guy at the, with his car is, I think you got more distraction here than you would in the courtroom.
I think
if I was on trial, I'd want those people paying attention to make sure that I get a free trial.
Yes, sir. I don't think there's any doubt about that, but I think the question is this better than nothing at all? And can we
definitely.
Can we make it workable, even though it may be an imperfect process? And that's why we're so grateful to you, because what we're trying to do is to try to see if it is workable. Because you see, if we go a year or two without having any trials, when we start having trials again, there's going to be an incredible backlog. And also, as Judge Henning was telling you at the beginning, there's this saying, justice delayed is justice denied. So we want to keep the justice system continuing. And we are extraordinary. I can't tell you how grateful we are to you for helping us try to develop a workable system so we can keep the justice system working. And I think in Florida, we ought to be particularly grateful for this, because today it's a pandemic. Tomorrow it might be a hurricane, where because of a hurricane or physical damage, we can't come to the courthouse. So in a state like Florida, this is a particularly valuable thing for us to develop so that we can use it in times of emergency. So thank you so much for your participation.
Can I add one thing? Because Mr. Fisher just reminded me, because of the guy that was like in the BMW dealership in the very beginning. It seems self-explanatory. I knew that I should be in a quiet room where I'm not walking around or there are distractions, and I warned my kids to stay out of the room, but maybe you need detailed instructions on the summons that say you should be in a quiet, isolated room without distractions. It seems like everybody should know that, but we did have a gentleman in the BMW dealership earlier, so clearly
that's a great idea, and that's why your input is so valuable to us, because this is sort of like a dry run, so to speak, and anything you can make the system better is extremely appreciated.
Chief Judge Tudor and Judge Henning, may I ask a question, please?
Just one second, Mitch, just 1 second. Will you hold just 1 second? I know there was someone on from the newspaper here, Steve. I don't want to put you on the spot. If you wanted to ask anything of the jury or anybody in the process, we're happy to hear from you, or you can remain silent there and take it all in as you please.
Well, thanks, Judge. If everyone can hear me.
Yes.
I just appreciate the chance to observe. It's informative. It's enlightening. I've served on juries twice in my career, despite a long career in journalism. I served as a foreman on a jury in Broward once, and I've served on a jury in Leon County as well. So I appreciate the chance to watch and observe.
All right. Well, just keep in mind when you write anything, Steve, it's always positive. All right.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you, Steve, for attending and watching. We appreciate your participation. Mitch, sorry, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. You all did a wonderful job, and I can't tell you heartfelt how much we appreciate it. What I'm interested in hearing from you are your ideas on how we can make jury service more attractive to people that receive summonses. What can we do in the court system and the legal community to make people want to serve, so that instead of 40, we get 80 or 90 in response to 100 summonses? Are there any ideas that you have about what we can do to enhance the experience, to make it so that people really want to serve? You do. You did a great job. There's others out there that didn't respond. What can we do better? Yes, Mr. Uringa.
Yeah, I mean, I think the easier you make it, the more, the more attractive it is to participate. So to my point, to several of the other jurors' points, the instructions being online, an online location, this is all online. So an easy, process, like, this is what you must do. This is how to link to the Zoom meeting, step by step. The easier we make it, I think the easier it will be for people to join in and participate.
Thank you.
If I can interrupt for one moment, let me start by saying this. I will stay on as long as the jurors and anyone who wants to ask the jury questions wants to ask. I am committed to doing that. But I do want to make sure that there is the opportunity for the attorneys who participated in the trial to get to ask questions of the jurors. And I have some questions that I would like to ask. But before I even do that, and since I know that some of the jurors and some of the individuals may have to leave as time goes by, I just want you all to know that I have been on the bench for almost 40 years. I don't remember a time I have been as proud as I am to serve. I'm proud of my community, which is you, the jurors that came in. I am proud of our court system that has had the technology and was able to tweak the technology so that we could work remotely and continue what needs to be done while the courthouse doors are closed. I am proud of the attorneys who are working very hard to invent and help us get to the new norm that it seems we're going to need. And I am very proud of the position that I have that's allowed me to preside over this historic event. I have no doubt that we will beat the virus, that the constitutional rights that we all have and desire to have will not be prohibited from going forward. It may not be the courtroom that we knew before, but everybody seems committed to move forward to keep our judicial system and to keep everybody safe while we are managing that new judicial system. So thank you all for what you have done. Couple of the questions that I have, there have been various, as you can imagine, various methods. Different jurisdictions have attempted to see if they would work in picking a jury. One of them is doing a trial. One of them is selecting the jury remotely, such as this, and then moving you to the courthouse so that the trial, once you're there, knowing that there would be social distancing, masks, food would be provided, the areas would be cleaned out, your temperature would be taken daily. I'm trying to remember what else is being done. And I want to know how you all would feel if you then moved to the courthouse for trial, or if you, and in that way you would be able to see the witnesses and see more than the heads of the attorneys, et cetera, or whether you would prefer to continue a trial from home. And if you all could respond to that issue for me. Yes, sir. Mr. Fisher, I saw your hand first.
I have no problem with either or.
Okay.
Which is why I volunteered to stay here.
Mr. Newell.
So I personally would be okay with either. My concern from a fairness perspective is if you did do selection online and then an in-person trial, that may artificially influence who winds up not trying to get themselves recused. Either from an age perspective, it may skew younger because of just the nature of the virus and the impact it seems to have on people. And unfortunately, it also may skew politically, just because as everything is, it seems to be one side or the other. And there's different views on the virus and its seriousness depending on political views. So that could be something that would influence who winds up in jury pools.
Okay, is there anyone else? And I'm trying to flip through both pages that we have here. Okay, let me tweak that question a little bit based
Judge
on
Juror
what
23.
23.
was Heather.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, that would be Ms. Zahalski?
Yeah, that's okay. I feel the opposite. I would not feel comfortable coming to the courthouse right now. I have 3 children at home and I'm not letting them go anywhere. So I'm trying to do as I say and do. If I was told I had to, I certainly would, but it would definitely, especially with the numbers rising in South Florida right now, it would not be my preference.
I will tell you that both the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in Florida and our Chief Judge are very concerned about the numbers and the safety of our community coming into the courthouse. And there has not been a push to, as you've heard, even from him, there has not been a push to get people back into the courthouse until it is safe, until we reach the phases that we are supposed to meet, until the CDC requirements we know can keep not only you safe, but me safe. So that's obviously one of the issues that we have. Whether we do the entire trial remotely, whether we find a place such as a hotel or something where we would have rooms that you could do the trial in separately. So we're trying to figure out what it is that the community wants. One of the jurors had mentioned, and I don't know whether they're still on, but they work with individuals who not only have the virus, but could potentially have the virus. And does that concern anybody, either those people who may do that and may worry about bringing it into the courthouse and then not want to serve, or those who would say, well, I'd serve, but that's not who I want in the jury room with me, quite honestly. I'd like to know your feelings about that, because that also will help us decide how and when we can decide what kind of trials to have.
It would,
nobody cares. Huh?
It would definitely concern me if somebody who was at high risk would be in the courthouse, but I wouldn't want to discriminate against anybody in either.
Oh, no, it's not a matter of discrimination. It would make us understand better that we would, it would be easier to begin having trials totally remotely as opposed to doing it partial. I believe Dade County is in the midst of a trial now where they are only picking the jury remotely and then they're going to the courthouse. And we haven't made a determination as to how that would go, but we need your input. We need the input of the public. Ms. Harris, your hand was up. Yes, ma'am. You're muted.
There we go. Thank you, sorry. I think that somebody that is working with people that have the disease, that they are probably more educated on how to protect themselves and how to protect others. And I think that they would be a real asset to coming into the courtroom and being able to know how and advise and with the cleanliness and things that need to be done. I don't think that I wouldn't have a problem with going to the courthouse and being with someone like that.
Those of you who were on the iPhone, and I don't know whether anyone stayed on here that is on an iPhone, how'd that work?
I see 4 people. I'm on the iPhone.
Okay.
Like 3 plus myself.
Okay.
And like let me say, like, I'm one of those who work in the hospital with the virus, and you know, it's really hard, and I don't like to go from place to place. Like, if I'm at work, I would not want to be in the courthouse a day or 2 later, because I like to make sure that I'm secure myself and not spreading. And I don't know, you know, there's time frame that when you're there working and you come home, you have to, most of the time, quarantine yourself, stay by yourself. And if I'm doing that, then I would not want to be in the courthouse, coming, leaving work and go there. I would need that time for to make sure that I'm okay and I'm not going to be bringing anything with me to anyone else. So you have to think about those stuff too. Because sometimes you don't pick it up, but you want to make sure that you are safe to be around other people. And you don't know who have a weak immune system and other things that are going on with other people. So at all time, you must protect everyone that you come in contact with. So, you know.
I appreciate that, and I believe you were one who had said that how you take care of things once you get into your house. So I'm glad that you stayed on to talk with us about this. And I'm sure on behalf of all of us, we thank you for the work that you're doing in these very difficult times.
Thank you.
When we were doing the beginning questioning, there were a number that needed to be excused, and not to the degree that there usually is, because you all knew that this was going to end today, somewhere around noon or 1 o'clock or whatever, but you knew it was just this one day. But a number mentioned the financial burdens of being here. And a trial usually doesn't take 4 hours. It usually takes longer, whether it goes a couple of days or a couple of weeks or even a couple of months. Is there anyone here who feels that if the trial had been longer, it would have been such a financial burden on you that you wouldn't have been able to serve? Either employers stop paying, or you private business that you have, single. All right, so I've got a few hands going up. Okay. All right. Because one of the things that I have been attempting to do as well is, because I am always hearing about the difficulty they have, and if we have a segment of our community that is unable to serve because of financial reasons, then we don't get a jury of our peers. And so I am trying to get legislation passed to increase juror pay, because that seems to be the majority of reasons that people can't serve. But do you all have any other reasons that you would think that would prohibit you from serving for that period of time? Yes, Ms. Zahowski.
Childcare, right, especially right now with it being summer. I mean, normally my kids are all gone for the summer, and I have all 3 in the house 24 hours a day with me. So, you know, even when I tell them to stay out, it's because they know I'm here. You know,
right.
If they need me, I'm here, and you know, they do need things from time to time. My kids aren't so little, but you know, for anybody who's got small children, I would imagine that would be a huge struggle.
Yes, sir. Number 9.
I'm a full-time student, and also I pay college out of pocket, meaning that I don't receive financial aid, so like I have to work.
Okay. All right, Mr. Doppelganger.
Yes, my job as a salesperson, I get paid a salary, but most of my income is from my commission. So if I miss a day of work, I miss a day of sales. So, you know, it really hurts me for not being in the office, for not being able to call my customers.
Thanks. Nobody raised their hand when they were asked if they were worried about the trial not being live. I think all of us would like to know why there was such acceptance with taking a trial of heads only.
Juror 18 had their hand
Juror
up.
18.
Okay, all right, number 18. I don't think.
I think to a certain extent I could accept that, but there are certain trials that I would want to have done in person, like, you know, criminal trials and stuff like that. But I mean, minor trials, you know, lawsuits, stuff like that, that absolutely could be done this way.
Anyone have any fears about judging the credibility on such a small screen, the credibility of a witness? Okay, good. All right, I'm going to allow the attorneys to ask some questions. I'm sure that they, again, have them. I've never known an attorney that didn't have some questions. So whenever you all are ready, you can begin.
I wanted to just thank you, Your Honor. I just wanted to briefly say thank you to everyone. I really, you guys were tremendous, and I really actually felt like I was in a courtroom listening to all you speak. I didn't have a chance to talk to you, but I really deeply appreciate everyone's service today. This was really an amazing experience, so thank you.
Judge, the only thing I would add, you know, I was impressed with the response that you all were not affected and that you could weigh the credibility. The only follow-up I'd have is it because you're so used to Zoom now and because you've used it with such regularity that you're more comfortable than you were perhaps a few months ago? Is that a good reason, or is that part of the reason why?
I would say definitely. I feel like I'm on Zoom all day, every day. At first, when I was exposed to Zoom, it was always, I was very nervous. But now, like yesterday, I went to 3 different Zoom calls. so it's like Zoom is like it's like a new norm. So it's like once I'm on Zoom, I know I'm taking care of business. My kids know, like, I have a sign. I'm on Zoom, they'll come next to me. Like they know I'm very important. That's I'm working or I'm doing something very important. So I think our new norm is Zoom now.
Yeah, they know that face, right?
Yeah.
I have a question, Your Honor. I'm actually a plaintiff's attorney. I played the role of a defense attorney in this case today, but I'm actually a plaintiff's attorney, so I represent injured people. Dan Harwin's also a plaintiff's attorney, Eric Rosen as well, and Brent is as well. We're all plaintiff's attorneys. My question is, a lot of our clients are catastrophically injured. You know, these are people that are missing arms and legs, or they have brain injuries, or they're in comas, or they passed away, you know, truly catastrophic injuries. So in our cases, frequently when our cases go to trial, we're asking for large sums of money, you know, millions of dollars, sometimes tens of millions of dollars. What I want to ask is, does anybody feel like it would be impossible for them or more difficult for them to award that kind of money when they're not actually able to meet the plaintiff? Because when you're in the actual courtroom, you get to see the plaintiff, you get to evaluate them, you get to relate to them. Does anybody think if the only time they saw the plaintiff, the injured person, was on a little 2-inch screen, that it would just be hard for them to award any, you know, large sums of money to that person? Does anybody think they would have difficulty with that? No? Mr. Baser, I see you shaking your head no. You feel like it would be just as easy for you to
Yeah,
do
definitely. It definitely would still be easy, yeah.
Yeah.
The evidence should be enough.
What if you all were at home, but the lawyers and witnesses were in the courthouse or in another place that they could be socially distanced, and so it was like watching a television show? If we were able to video that for you so that you saw everything in the courtroom, kind of like
that would be good.
Would that help? Would that relieve anybody? I don't even know.
More helpful.
But if you tell me you want it, I'll try and get it.
Well,
Yes.
the hard part,
Maybe for a one time.
What do you
Sometimes
mean
you
by
just like you on one day that the plaintiff are coming to the courtroom and you can see what exactly is going on, and then that will be the only time he has to appear in the courtroom, so that you can physically see what happened to him, and then he would not have to go through that daily routine of being in the courtroom like he would have been before.
Okay.
sometimes we do that. Ms. DeMontagnac, if the plaintiff's injuries are so bad, sometimes they're not actually sitting in the courtroom until the day when they're going to testify. They'll come into
Right.
the courtroom. But in some
Just that
trials,
one
they're
day.
there. Yeah, but in some trials, they're there every single day. And so the jury gets to kind of, in a way, know them, especially in these trials that are weeks long, you really get to get a feel for the person. My concern is that it's going to be more difficult to do that over Zoom. So that's why I asked that question. If you thought that, it might be harder for you to award these large sums of money if you weren't actually in a room with the person,
No, that wouldn't be hard because as I say, I work in that field where I can see so many patients who have so many injuries from different accidents and stuff. So you have an idea what they can go through.
Okay.
So you can know what is real from what is not.
Number 10.
Number 10 had his hand up.
Number 10.
Yeah, number 10 is looking to talk.
Hey, how you all doing? Well, wouldn't you in this format take away all these little screens when you're putting out evidence to show us the evidence as a blown up, whether it's a photo, a person, an object, so that you could get the true gist of what you're talking about? And even if it's in a documented format, it would be blown up. So I wouldn't have to look at whatever the 20 people on my screen right now. I would look at just that evidence that's being shown with the person in the background and his narrative explaining what he's trying to show or she's trying to show of that type of evidence.
That's correct, Mr. Longo. When they would be showing evidence, you would be seeing just the evidence and then a little square of whoever's speaking.
Right.
So that would improve your visual on the evidence. You wouldn't see all the participants in the trial during that share screen time.
Right. So if it would be a person, you would actually see the emotion of what is being showed also. So yeah, I think this would work fine. Yeah, some of the most complicated court cases, I think you would have to be a little bit more of a, as the judge was saying, more personal, where you would have separated but all in one building. Would probably have to work on a more complicated cases and so forth. But I think this would work fine.
Thanks for your feedback.
You're welcome.
Yes, let's go with Mr. Newell first and then juror number 5. Mr. Dr. Glum, we'll go to you next. All right, Mr. Newell.
So I just wanted to circle back to your original question regarding the sort of TV show style of having the counsel in at the courthouse. I personally wouldn't find that necessary. I think while there's undoubtedly a difference between being digital and being in person, if I'm not personally there, I don't see the difference of whether they're there or not. And I've had that sort of same experience with doing digital work meetings, right? It's different if you're in person, but if one person's digital and everybody else is not, it just, to me, it's not any different from my experience.
I agree with that too.
Yeah, what I was just going to say was most of the time when people are judging other people, whether they're looking at them or speaking with them, they read the body language. And you can read a person's body language just as easily on a computer screen as you can in person. Other people may disagree with me, but I really don't see a whole lot of difference.
And let me ask you, how many of you felt like you were in court? How many of you felt the grandeur of the proceeding, the seriousness of the proceeding, and what you were doing?
I did.
Sort of.
No.
When the lawyers came on.
Oh, I wasn't good enough, huh?
You too, ma'am.
Judge, for those
Your
that
first
did,
appearance, Judge.
Yeah.
Your
For
first
those that-
appearance let
sorry.
us know it was serious.
Especially when you ordered stuff.
Well, that's good to know, because that's a concern that we've had also as to what the effect would be not being in a courthouse or a courtroom, and how long it would take you to, if you even could, feel that you were the important member of a jury trial as a juror is. So, yes, ma'am. No, number 11. Yeah, Ms. Lucent.
It's just like the lawyer said, because we use Zoom so much now, it's becoming part of our lives. I feel like as soon as it's a Zoom meeting, whatever it may be, it's important because that's how we're communicating with the world, because we cannot communicate face to face. Whether we're at home, whether we're in the courtroom, we're still able to see each other's face and then feel each other's vibe. Like I'm looking at you, like it feels like you're right in front of me. So I don't think being in front of the screen changes that, knowing the condition that we in right now. So I feel like that's very, very appropriate.
It's the new norm.
Let me also ask this about it. I was not able to get a virtual background, like as you saw Judge Tudor come in, this is me at home, because I kept fading in and out and it didn't work. Did it bother you at all that it didn't look like I was sitting in a courtroom? Do I need to tell them to get me better equipment so that
No. It was natural. And
you have your robe on.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, zero.
Judge
Yes,
number
I do.
23.
And your robe is on. It's like, you mean business.
Yes, it is. Mr. Newell's hand is up. Yes, sir. And then
So,
Mr. Longo.
yeah, a couple comments on that. I definitely think being in the robe is obviously important. What I would say is I think that no background is probably better than bad background. No offense to our esteemed counsel. Some of the green screen or whatever's going on is a little distracting in some cases. So I would personally say no background is better than bad, but if you could do it well, I think it probably would help just from a perception perspective.
Okay, Mr. Longo, I think, had some.
I think he put it in a great perspective. I think if you have that court type looking background with all of you, it'll look more professional, presentable. And I think when you set up the format of the little windows here, if you could have the court people across the top and then the attorneys across the next tiles and then all the jurors down below, my head's moving all over the place to see who's talking and what's going on. So I think even that kind of stuff.
That's a Zoom problem. That,
Yeah,
and we've
that's something
notified.
we can't control that.
Orlando?
Yeah, we're working with Zoom to get that corrected so that they can let us control where the tiles go, in essence.
Right.
That's a great idea. Judge, Ms. Zahalski also has her hand up.
Oh, okay.
I agree. I think background is really, really important, but I actually find the virtual backgrounds really distracting because as soon as somebody with a virtual background moves, their arm sort of disappears or their face kind of looks funny and cartoonish sometimes. But at the same time, in terms of a regular background, you know, the people on the screen in front of me that are sitting in front of a blank white wall, it's much less distracting to me than the people that are in a room and you're kind of like, what's behind them? And, you know, I think it can be distracting to sort of see what's going on behind them. I prefer a regular, real background to the virtual, but, you know, a blank white wall or you know, something blank is much better.
Screen or something, or a sheet or something like that.
Yeah, or even just if it's a plain wall, or you know, any of the people on the screen in front of me that are sitting in a room where, you know, like Robert got a white wall behind him. That's not distracting to me, but you know, like I've got all kinds of papers on my desks and a big mess, and now you see my mess, and it could be distracting. But the virtual backgrounds, as soon as you move and you get sort of a line on the side of your face or your arm disappears, to me that's really distracting. And when you're talking about like being able to see the plaintiff, for example, you know, if they're moving or they're not moving and you can't see part of them because they disappear within the green screen, that could impact your perception.
Judge Henning, could I ask one question to segue off what you asked earlier? Let me throw out to you all. You all are asking questions about Zoom, and it seems clear this format could work. What if I threw into the equation, here are your options? You do this trial over Zoom like we're doing it now, or if we compelled you to come to the courthouse, you and everybody else in the courtroom would have to wear a mask, and you would be at 6-foot intervals, social distancing. Some of you may be in a different courtroom to accomplish social distancing, watching the trial. So I was kind of curious if that was the atmosphere that we brought you back in, whether you thought you could live with that if that's what we ordered, or would you now prefer the Zoom platform that we're using?
Zoom.
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 Either or.
I would say, and this is probably not the politically correct answer, but I would say it depends on the severity of the case. You know, if it's I don't think a murder trial over Zoom is probably the best idea.
Yeah, we're never going to be at the point where we're trying heavy-duty criminal cases.
Yeah, and I
I
didn't
think the
imagine.
most we could ever expect on Zoom on a criminal case might be something like a DUI trial. There's just too many complications with due process, right to confrontation, all these kinds of things, the right to the lawyer to speak to his client contemporaneous with the trial going on. So it poses a lot more issues than the civil trials.
Yeah, I think for civil trials, I would have no issue with doing Zoom.
Judge, I have a question if I can ask the panel.
Sure.
This is Lisa Beligian. I'm a defense attorney, and I know that when we're in the courtroom and the jury panel is all sitting together and the lawyers are asking questions to one individual, many times somebody may agree or disagree, and it's very easy in front of everyone to voice your thoughts. I didn't notice a lot of that during this. Did anyone feel that because of this format, they needed to wait till they were chosen specifically because of the mute and unmute? There wasn't a lot of interaction amongst the panel itself. Did anyone find that that was happening?
Yes. Yes, I do better interacting personally.
So if you,
harder to jump in. It's much harder to jump in this scenario. You're on mute and you sort of feel like you need to wait to be called on, and so I waited with my hand up every time except for right now, because I feel a little more comfortable now to just sort of jump in, but you feel like you kind of have to wait your turn and be called on.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I would agree with that. You can't see, it's harder to judge like the body language of when somebody's finishing up or if somebody else next to you is going to jump in. Those kind of social cues that we're used to are harder. So it's more of a raise your hand type situation.
Maybe, this is Judge Rodriguez, maybe electronically, people that want to jump in can hit the electronic, we can tell them to hit the electronic raise your hand like that, like Mr. Reitman just did. And that way, if they want to comment on somebody else's answer, they can indicate it.
Judge, the issue with that, with the raise hand, is if you have multiple panels of pages, you may not, the speaker that's asking the question may not see the raised hand. They only see the 4x5 or the 5x5 they see on screen.
I would like Orlando, if he would please, to speak to the question of the security of the proceedings. Once they're videoed, how evidence comes in, how it cannot be tampered with, the protection of the parties, the jurors, all of the security measures that we take both at the courthouse with our records and what Zoom can and cannot do, and whether we're at a different level of Zoom than maybe some of the other organizations that use it.
That's correct. So just to briefly talk about that, we are behind a secure Zoom environment. We're not on a free Zoom account at all. We're paying for it as a government entity. So everybody that's in the trial or the hearings that we've been doing since March have been in a secured environment where we are not just on the security of Zoom, but we're also, as the administrators of Zoom, we're making sure that every judge's courtroom or court Zoom room is regulated to make sure that nobody can jump in and Zoom bomb or share out of turn or jump into the meeting without appropriately having to attend it. So yes, Judge, everything that we're doing on here is on a secure network, both in Zoom and at the courthouse as well.
Yes, ma'am.
It might be nice to tell people like us that, because I was surprised when I got the link that I didn't have to put in a password. And
right.
So for the people that particularly had security concerns, because Zoom has had lots of issues over the last few months, it might be nice just to share that information with us so that they feel secure.
Okay. Yeah, the main reason we don't have passwords, we do have a waiting room. It's just like if you went to the courthouse, you go through security, and you can go to a courtroom and sit down and observe court. That's your right to observe most court rooms. So we have the same type of environment, but at the same time, it is secured. It is, the judge and our team is making sure that the attendants are secured.
I think that a frequently asked question sheet that went out with the jury summons that told you how we are cleaning the courthouse, how we are protecting you safely, how Zoom is effective and safe, might do to go help alleviate some of those problems that potential jurors would have.
Agreed.
I think maybe we do need to tell people, though, that this is Judge Rodriguez. We need to tell them it is a public courtroom.
Yep.
And it's a little harder to tell who's watching an open trial, which this would have been an open trial, than if you're sitting in the courtroom. So maybe it's a blend of the two, blend of security and also having to keep the courtroom open to the public as required by the Constitution.
Yes, but there's also, I don't have a bailiff at these points to go up to somebody and say, excuse me, who are you? What's your purpose here? Or if they're making noise, be quiet. But we do have a manner, if I'm correct, Orlando, of being able to remove individuals
Correct.
from the proceeding if they.
Yeah, so in my mind, I think Judge Tudor's talked about this in the previous mock trials. There needs to be some sort of a tech/bailiff in these type of trial proceedings, so that they can mute, they can turn video off, make sure a juror's presence is there, and things like that. Sending people to break rooms, bringing them back, removing people if we have to, like that one juror that we saw that was not selected or not supposed to be in the room and stuff like that. So yeah, I think somebody alongside the judge to regulate security is always a good idea.
I had a quick question, if I may, Judge. I'm Jeff Edelman. I'm the president of the Fort Lauderdale chapter of the American Board of Trial Advocates. Appreciate everybody participating today. Getting back to something that was asked about being able to hear what other people are saying and piping in, do you think it would be helpful if we said something like, do not put your microphone on mute? Have it unmuted so you can pipe in. Would it make any difference if we did that?
23 has unmute yourself, juror 23. There you go.
I think in this scenario, if you've got 23 plus people not on mute, you're going to have a disaster on your hands, because there's any background noise at all, it's really, really distracting. But maybe if you just started the proceedings when you start the questioning portion and say to us jurors, it's okay to jump in if you feel like you have a comment or you agree with somebody, feel free to take yourself off of mute and jump in. I think that would make people feel more comfortable, because I think people, out of respect on Zoom, tend to stay on mute until somebody calls on them. So I think if you just give people permission to jump in, they're more apt to do it. But if you had everyone off of mute, you would never get anything accomplished ever.
The lawyers could control that too when they're asking questions. If they want group input, at the end of their question, they could say, hey, if you've got an opinion on this, jump in and tell me now.
Exactly. And then the other thing is just, all of you have gone through this experience. This is the first one we've done in Broward County. And what this Q&A afterwards, we're just absorbing everything you're telling us.
Yeah.
But what I really want to know is, when you leave today, what are going to be your final impressions of the process, and what are you going to tell your family and friends about doing a trial this way, serving on a jury, and whether or not you think it's going to be something we can do? Anybody want to speak on that?
I would say it's clearly a work in progress, obviously, but it was not by any means a disaster or anything. Like, it felt very very similar to jury duty in the past. How the trial would go, it's hard to know. But as far as the selection process, it felt very similar. Outside of obviously the first, 45 minutes of tech review and all of that stuff. But that's just to be expected.
That same time would be used in the jury room, calling everybody's name, seeing what's going on. So that's going to be there in one form or another. Do the jurors have any questions or comments that you want to make?
I find it a little more relaxing. I've been summoned for jury duty many times, and I tell you, it usually be so hectic to get down to the courthouse in the mornings, that time of morning, and to get to the parking lot and all of those stuff. And I used to find it very frustrated getting there. I never really want to do it. So I worked last night. I did a 12-hour shift, and I came home and got myself ready and do this. And it was the less stressful thing I've done. It was so easy for me to I leave work at 7:30, came home, took my shower, and just tried to get myself. And it was more relaxing than if I had to hit the road to get down to the courthouse. Because the traffic alone is a disaster on Broward Boulevard to come down. So I find it a little easier, and I would do this more than coming to the courthouse.
Juror number 6 had their hand up.
Well, I was going to, first of all, thank you for allowing us to be here, Judge. Orlando, you did a fantastic job.
Thank you.
I'm also agreeing with it, as I used to work at Broward and Andrews, and it is a pain in the neck. I do work for Broward County. It's a pain in the neck sometimes with traffic there. So to be home, this is fantastic. I love it. But it'd be nice also to be at the jury, if we were picked, to be downtown. I'd like that too.
Trying to double check the second page here.
I think we're good on that, Judge.
Okay. Are you double screened?
Yeah, I'm double screened. I think we're good with that. Judge, you have any other questions? Any of the attorneys have any other questions? I mean, I think the only one question I have, technology-wise, for those of you, and I think there's only one, maybe two that are using the mobile phones. Everybody else is using a laptop or a computer. I know Ms. DeMontignac, you're on an iPhone, right?
Correct.
Anybody else on an iPhone?
No, I'm using an iPad.
Okay. Chris, I can't see your last name. How was your experience on an iPhone?
Yeah, I had no problems with it.
Okay.
Other than I can't see 20 people like other people are saying.
Right.
But
Right.
Okay. All right.
I'm
So
on
everybody
an
else
iPad.
Okay, Ms. Lucene? Yep.
Yes, I'm on an iPad. What I actually do, I leave it on the speaker view, so whoever's speaking, I could see them clearly, and then I really feel the one-on-one interaction.
Right.
Yeah, or else I can still put it in the grid and still see 9 people, which I don't see the necessity of that. I really want to see whoever's talking.
I completely agree with you. I think that's what I'm going to do for the instructions. For anybody appearing on a mobile device, they should be on speaker view so that they can see clearly who's speaking at any time. I don't think there's a need for a juror to see the rest of the jury panel at the same time. They need to focus in on who's speaking. I think all the attorneys that are participating agree with me on that, right? If they're clearly seeing the witness, if they're answering, or clearly seeing the attorney, if the attorney's speaking, that's the best view for anybody on a mobile device. Great. Everybody else on laptops and computers, how was your experience with it? Are most of you on one screen? Anybody on 2 screens? Everybody's on one screen?
One screen.
That's
Okay.
great.
And everybody it was clear on your screen, everything you were doing? All right, great. Great.
Can I comment? I lost internet connection, or Zoom kicked me out something during a time period at the end. And what I noticed is trying to get back in, there was a whole host of things that I missed.
Okay.
So just whether or not something has to be, if somebody loses a connection, I don't know how you see it on your end,
Right.
that
Okay.
there might be a pause to be made until that person can get reconnected.
No, and I would agree with you. And that's where I think almost like a tech slash bailiff needs to be aware of every juror and make sure that their presence is still there during the proceeding. I think it's a good point, Mrs. Harris.
We can tell the juror, this is Judge Rodriguez again, we can tell the jurors that if at any time they lose their internet connection, when they come back, to tell the lawyers in the court.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And you realize that that comes with extra taxes to us in order to pay for having all these people and all these abilities that we need.
Any other technical concerns from the jurors? I think everything else, for the most part.
Is the house gas.
I just have one
Good.
other thing. I had used the chat really early on to privately message you, Orlando,
Yep.
about the compensation. And so, you know, I don't know if you saw it or didn't see it, but, you know.
I think I saw it late. I think I saw it late. By that point, that's when I just went into the pretty much just going through the list.
Right.
Everybody.
So people that are really used to using Zoom
Right.
might just sort of go to using the chat. So if you don't want them to use the chat, maybe
Right.
you give them.
That was
instructions
our,
on that, or-
just to talk about the check-in part briefly, that was our first time trying to do the check-in, the preliminary check-in on Zoom. That's probably one of the points that we need to refine more and practice more between Zoom and us and the clerk's jury room. I think they're still in. I think we did it okay. It was an okay process. I think originally we wanted to start up earlier and we still stayed at 8:30. I think if we start earlier, it'll give us more time to get through it. But I think we're going to try and do a couple more changes to the way we do it so that it
Orlando?
improves the process. Yep. Yes, sir, Judge.
It's Judge Rodriguez. You know, jurors aren't really supposed to be chatting
No,
during
yeah,
jury selection or during the trial because it prevents the lawyers
correct.
from knowing one side or the other, or the judge from knowing what's going on. So we're going to have to deal with chat as a
Well, yeah,
as an issue.
the chatting was supposed to be turned off. That would be the standard. I would agree with you on that. At some point, I thought I had turned it off, but it stayed on throughout.
If I just might say, you know, at Abota, we've been working with the Broward Judiciary to try and help as much as we can. And after this is over, we are going to be putting it on our website with permission. And if there's anything that you forget to ask and want us to relay to the courts, I'm just putting in the chat, since it's open, just putting our information if you want to know more about what we're doing in the process, because this is obviously really important and we never get a chance to talk to jurors. So we really do appreciate this Q&A.
All right. Judge, I'll leave it to you.
Yes. Well, let me say again, thank you. I want you all to know that you are no longer under my order not to discuss what occurred here. In fact, I would appreciate you going, talking to family members, talking to friends, talking on your next Zoom meeting that you have. Your feelings about jury trials in this fashion and how they feel about jury trials in this fashion. Orlando, if you can put up for them my email, if anybody has any ideas or thoughts as time goes by, this is a work in progress. You are what makes it successful. It happens to be jhenning@17th.flcourts.org, which you can also get off of the judicial site and he'll put up. But we are very anxious to hear anything further that you have to say. It was an absolute privilege meeting you, working with you, hearing your ideas, seeing your commitment. I am just thrilled to be a judge in Broward County, and it's because of you. And hopefully when the courthouse gets open again, and if you happen to be downtown, please come say hello, because eventually we'll be able to shake each other's hands. So thank you.
Judge Tudor, you have
Thank
anything
you.
further?
I do not. Judge Henning couldn't have said it better. Thanks, Judge.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Looking forward to see being progressive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
How do you get off of this?
Bottom right.
No,
Bottom
there it is,
right,
Lee.
and-
Thanks.
Yeah.
Wow.
Job well done. Thank you.